Hello friends, we're here today in John chapter 18. I'm just going to highlight a couple of things from this chapter because it's a very big chapter. So one thing that I thought was particularly interesting in the book of John about this, the betrayal of Jesus, is the I am statement. Now I'll tell you what I'm talking about. When Jesus went across, the river, and he went into the Garden of Gethsemane, which was a garden of olive trees. So he goes over to the Garden of Gethsemane, and eventually the people that are coming to arrest him, along with Judas and the high priest and his council, are all there. And they say, "Are you Jesus?" And he says, "I am he." That's what it says in here, but if you'll notice in your translation, if you look, it's bolded, or it's in italic. And the reason is because the word that he's using there is the word that God gave for himself back when Moses came to the burning bush. He says, "Who should I say you are? What is your name?" And he says, "My name is I am." So Jesus is saying this. They're saying, "Are you Jesus?" And he's saying, "I am." And essentially, he's claiming his divinity. So anytime anybody tells you that Jesus never claimed to be God, here's another example. This is probably example number, 10 just in this book where Jesus claims to be God. But he says it. He says, "I am." And what's interesting to me about this is that the people that were coming to arrest him, now it doesn't clearly say it in the text, but it's about 600 people. They say it's like a certain, I forget the word they use. It's like a regiment or anyways, it means that it was 600 soldiers. 600 soldiers were coming to arrest Jesus, to get him and his 12 men. And when he said, "I am," they all fell back. Now, I don't know why. It may be, I've heard people say before, that when he said, "I am," meaning I am God, he was using the voice of God, and it scared everybody away. I don't necessarily think that's what happened. There's nothing in here that suggests that he, said it louder, or that there was reverb with his words or anything like that. It just says that he said, I am he. But why did they fall back? That is a good question. And I think that they knew of Jesus and his abilities, and they know that this guy has done so many miracles over and over again, and they're coming there to arrest this person who is clearly somebody who is, if not God, directly sent by God. And I think they were afraid, especially when he claims to be God right in front of them. So they all fall back, and he says, "Who are you seeking?" And they said, "Jesus." And he says, "I said I am he." And then he says, essentially, "Just take me and let everybody else go." So what I think is the most interesting part about this is that Jesus kind of had the upper hand, even though there are 600 soldiers there. He so willingly went with them, knowing exactly what was going to happen. So the next interesting thing I thought was the Peter thing. Peter denying him 3 times. Now, I've covered this, and, this is the last gospel we're getting to. So, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and here, I feel like I'm finally getting it. Because I kind of feel like in the past, and even here, I look at it and I think, what's the big deal? He denied, he claimed that he didn't know Jesus so that he could see what's happening. He was claiming that he didn't know him so that they didn't, kill him as well. I feel like that's at least understandable. But when I read it this time, in reading the previous chapters, Jesus was constantly telling them, "Don't fall away from me. Stay with me." Peter was saying, "Lord, I will die for you. I will die before I deny you." What else I noticed about this is that he kind of went in the door, but it says the other disciple. Now, pretty much everybody agrees that it's probably talking about John, the writer of the book. John, the writer of the book, knew the high priest. And so when they brought him to the house of the high priest, he just let John in. He's like, oh, John, knowing he's one of his disciples, lets him in. And then John asked the servant girl to let Peter in. That's how Peter got in. So John wasn't afraid to claim that he knew Jesus because everybody knew that he knew Jesus. But Peter was even making a scene, telling people, swearing that he didn't know him. And when he did it the third time, the rooster crows, and it said he went away and he wept bitterly. Now, what I think is interesting about this, or at least the part that is convicting to me this time that I'm reading it, is that he really did do something wrong. Denying Jesus is a bad thing to do. I mean, Jesus can forgive him for that. Of course, he can forgive everybody. But I kind of felt like everybody had been really hard on Peter. And I guess I still think that because it's understandable what he did. However, he really did do something wrong. And we know that Peter, later on, was proclaiming Jesus in other parts of the world. And he ended up being crucified because of it. So we know that Peter was essentially supposed to be doing that from the beginning. And essentially, that's what we're supposed to be doing too. We're supposed to be there right with Jesus. We're supposed to proclaim him everywhere we go. One thing I want to clear up about this chapter is who is the high priest? It looks like in certain parts of this chapter that it's Caiaphas. In other parts, it looks like it's Annas, his father-in-law. So who is it? The way that it was explained to me is that Annas was the high priest, and then the Romans didn't like him, and so they kind of forced him out as the high priest. And so they ended up making Caiaphas his son-in-law, someone that he could still probably control. So they're kind of both the high priest because the Jewish people still recognized Annas as the high priest. However, officially, Caiaphas is, because they're under Roman rule. So just to clear that up, that's what's going on in this. The last thing that I think is so interesting about this chapter is just one statement that's made by Pontius Pilate. They bring Jesus to Pontius Pilate, and Jesus, he keeps on asking him, are you a king? They're trying to get that king statement out of him for one reason, and that is that they don't care about anything else that Jesus has done. They just want to know if he's claiming to be king. Because if you're claiming to be king under Roman rule, that means that you're kind of like starting an uprising. That's punishable by death. So that's what they're trying to get out of him, and that's what he's asking. And so Jesus says, you're right in saying that I'm a king. He's saying everyone on the side of truth listens to me. And then the statement that I think is very interesting is that Pontius Pilate says, "What is truth?" And then he walks away. He doesn't wait for the answer. Like, Jesus probably could have led him to salvation had it not been for him just walking away. But he says, "What is truth?" And then he walks away. I don't know what he means by this, if I'm perfectly honest. I've heard some philosophers talk about, if you only waited and really dealt with this question about what is truth and who is Jesus. I think that's interesting in a very philosophical way. But I don't really think that that's what he was saying. I think Pontius Pilate was just making a statement that it doesn't matter what the truth is to him. What is truth? It's he probably didn't know what Jesus was talking about, but I think he was also saying it doesn't matter what Jesus is talking about. He is being forced to crucify Jesus, or to sentence Jesus to being crucified for political reasons. And he's just kind of a political puppet here. It really doesn't matter what the truth is. What matters is keeping Rome happy and keeping the Jews happy. So everyone who listens to truth hears my voice. He's saying, what does it matter? What is truth? Like, who cares what the truth is? Now, what should we take from this? If we come to Jesus, we don't want to have that attitude. We don't want to come to Jesus and be like, oh, what is truth? Like, what does it matter? When we come to Jesus, we need to look right at him and say, what is the truth? What is the truth? And earlier in this book, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. So that's the truth. And that's John chapter 18. Have a great day.